Your point of view is that this is a judicial process, has nothing to do with the executive, and
nothing to do with the executive.
Nothing to do with the executive. I get your point of view. However, as you can understand, the sensitivity in India is that despite our close relationship in the past with Malay, there is a great sensitivity about what China wants to do. You know, there are reports of China building if I'm not mistaken, a naval submarine base in Marau, the island of Maldives.
No. It's absolutely nonsense. I mean, it's absolutely nonsense. It's not correct. There's no naval base here. We don't have any military connections, military relations with China. Come on. We have relations with India. We do joint military exercises with India in this region, in the Maldives, with Sri Lanka, India and Maldives together.
So I
understand that there is a military exercise done by Indian military, Indian Navy and the Maldives and all those things. There is nothing to this effect with China.
So
this accusation about Maldives having military relations with China is absolutely not correct.
So
please don't take us on this.
No, Mr. Imad, I'm only putting across what came in the media. This is not my accusation against you at all.
No, just a minute. Arnab, if they have no military connections with China, why did the Chinese defense minister visit Maldives and shortly thereafter the Maldives defense minister visit China? Did he go there to play ping pong or what?
You know, the defense minister of the United States is also as free as anybody. Come visit us and give us an invitation, and our defense minister could visit there. Our defense minister has asked the Indian government for an invitation to visit India. He has in fact done this several times. Our president made it his business to make India the first country that he would visit outside, after assuming office. And he did it exactly like that.
Yeah, Mr. Imad, the reason we are having this discussion here on Times Now, which is not with an intention, let me say, to, add fire to the relationship between Malay and India, but the representatives on the Times Now panel are extremely senior journalists, and this discussion, I am sure, will eventually go a long way in resolving the situation. Mr. Seshadri Chari had an observation to make to you, Mr. Masood Imad. Yes, Mr. Chari.
I can agree that I can understand that the Maldivian president did go to China. He could have gone to some other place like Beijing or wherever it was possible for him, or he could have insisted on the space. The problem that India is worried about is the province of Urumqi, which is also turning out to be the hotbed of Islamic revivalism and Islamic radicalism in that country. Even Chinese are worried about it. And now this is where I am worried that Chinese could be strategically involving some of their unwanted non-state actor groups in Maldives. And because Maldives took extreme interest in China, the Americans are also now interested in this area, and thereby the biggest error that you have committed, an act of omission and commission, is bringing the entire Indian Ocean region, making it an open play area for the international agencies.
Well, okay, let's get Mr. Imad to respond. Mr. Imad, you heard that?
Yeah, I heard what he said. I would like to classify that as splitting hairs and trying to swallow cows. I mean, it's absolutely misleading and misguiding. I hope, that you don't do this again and again and again and mislead the Indian people. Now, we have only economic relations in China as of now. The Chinese government assisting economically in infrastructure development, and so we maintain that relation. We have a better relationship militarily and economically with India. India, we have expressly said, is our closest neighbor and is the big brother. So there is no ifs, ands, or buts about this thing. It remains true, even in Dr. Wahid's administration.
Yeah, but what the Chinese want to do is that they want to develop these two islands, which is called, I think one is called Ihavandhu and the other is called Marandhu Islands, with transshipment ports, among other things, as well as reports go, grabbing a piece of action in the development of the second international airport. So the whole question has been that with the deteriorating relationship because of the GMR company Rao, Maldives has got an entry point. KC Singh, we need to resolve this eventually, right? We too need to resolve this. This cannot be a prolonged diplomatic standoff. True. I mean, I'm sure Mr. Masood Imad and his president don't want that, neither do we. How do we resolve this? eventually wwithout letting the Chinese use the situation for their advantage?
Extended our arms to the Indian government. We have been very nice with the Indian government. We have not refused the Indian government, and we have seen reciprocity in the Indian reaction, except for when it comes to Mr. Nasheed. When it comes to this particular incident of Mr. Nasheed walking into your embassy, is nothing to do with us. He's a free man in this country. He has friends in the embassy. He's sitting down in the embassy talking to his friends.
Mr. Ahmad, may I come in?
This is not an issue for us.
Yeah, Mr. Imad, KC
Mr.
Singh, former
Imad.
Secretary, Ministry of External Affairs, wants to make a point to you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Let me begin with Mr. Ahmad. Mr. Ahmad, you are not recognizing that India was in fact what we are calling at this end very hasty in recognizing the unseemly transfer which took place when power was passed on to your president. Now, instead of recognizing that India did not intervene at that stage, our view is we should not have recognized Mr. Waheed at that point and negotiated a better transition to the elections at that stage. Having missed that point, your president then goes along and utilizes his position after, of course, visiting India to curry favor with China. Now, you have to understand the sensitivity of India.
You're wrong.
You live in the shadow of India.
No, I detest it.
You are next door neighbor to us. We can...
Now, Mr. Imad says, Mr. Imad disagrees.
So you have to
KC
show
Singh.
sensitivity.
No, Mr. Imad, who's representing the Maldivian president on Newshour, disagrees. Mr. Imad, go ahead, please.
Mr. Ahmad, let me finish.
I think he's making a wrong impression on the whole thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Dr. Waheed has not used... This president has
You're
not
not even
used
listening to what I'm saying. I'm saying we recognize... You think we should have recognized the president the next morning when you muscled the previous president out? It was not an orderly change, as Mr. Nasheed very clearly pointed out later.
The transfer of power was constitutional, and the transfer of power was absolutely constitutional. I will ask you a question. Do you know how the transfer of
What is constitutional? Why did Mr. Nasheed start complaining the next day that he was muscled out?
Listen, when the president resigns, in front of
you have
the
to
camera,
address this problem. This is a problem, an internal problem. You cannot have an overnight cloak and dagger change of presidency. You should have had the change by an open election in your legislature and then done it, not force him out of office.
Without allowing me to talk. And I can start talking the same thing.
Because you were talking all along.
Mr. KC Singh, allow Mr. Imad to complete it.
When everybody talks.
Now,
let's one of us talk.
No, but
okay, 1 minute, gentlemen. Mr. Imad, 1 minute.
Yeah.
Actually,
Can
Mr.
we
Imad...
one person talk?
No, I understand. Mr. Imad, there are... Mr. Imad, this is Arnab again. There are actually 4 panelists here. So, there are 4 of them and there is 1 of you. I think this is a reason why we are going up and down. But I want everyone to have his point of view, including you, Mr. Imad. Let me assure you...
I want to make something very clear to the gentleman who was talking just now.
Yeah, go ahead.
The transfer of power was constitutional. It was recognized by the Chief Justice of this country. Who is more higher than the Chief Justice?
In the middle of the night.
To the vice president of this country, and now who is the sitting president? So it was not a coup. The president,
yes, but the other person started complaining. The other person started complaining
to the parliament, to the Speaker of the Parliament, that he was resigning. How could you call it a coup?
Well, let's Mr. Imad, can we agree to disagree on that point? You can call it a coup. Some people call it a police mutiny, overnight protest plus police mutiny. It was clearly not a normal transfer of power. But I don't want to go back. I want to go forward, Mr. Imad.
Yes, we should go forward.
Your government too, and His Excellency, your President. Your President too is completely aware, sir, that you cannot have in the Embassy of India your former President locked up, and it's quite clear that the government of India is not just letting Mr. Nasheed walk out because it's concerned about his security. Mr. Imad, 1 minute. I want to get in one more voice. I'm coming back to you.
I can assure you and the public in India that Mr. Nasheed is a free man. He is staying inside the embassy out of his own choice. There is no arrest warrant issued by any court in this country to arrest Mr. Nasheed, and there will be no policeman in this country who will arrest Mr. Nasheed. Even if Mr. Nasheed crosses the road to the hotel in front of the embassy and have a cup of coffee, there is no problem.
You will arrest him the moment he goes out. There were 200 policemen, I'm told.
The order to arrest has ceased validity effective 4 o'clock yesterday.
Okay, 1 minute. Mr. Imad, so I want to get Sushant Sareen back in. Seshadri Chari coming to you right after that. Yes, Mr. Sushant Sareen is making a point. You go ahead.
I have 2 or 3 short points to make. The first, when Mr. Imad talks about the Chinese just being involved in infrastructure development, do you know how the Gwadar port started? It was just an infrastructure project which the Chinese were starting. And now we know what has happened with the Gwadar port. The Chinese involvement in Maldives is a very serious cause for concern, number one. Number two, Mr. Wahid and the rest of this bunch, their links with Islamic radical groups like the LET, which have started forming some kind of a base, are known to have formed bases inside Maldives, is a known fact, and they have been hobnobbing with these guys. They have been pandering to the Islamist groups inside Maldives. Finally, I think he's being disingenuous when he talks about this great and very fair judicial system. It is nothing but a kangaroo court, which is hounding a former president who has been illegally deposed, or at least deposed under duress. So for him to talk about as if it's all very hunky-dory, the man is free to go, it's some kind of a great place where everybody is walking freely. We know before Mr. Nasheed came in, the kind of regime which existed in Malé, the kind of...
Okay, gentlemen, need to get a reaction from Masood Imad. Let's get a reaction from Mr. Imad.
I think you need to get a reaction from me. All right, let the gentleman who was talking this understand that all of the infrastructure development projects that are going on in Malé now was initiated during Mr. Gayoom's time, none during Dr. Wahid's time. All right, that said, Mr. Nasheed is being tried not by a kangaroo court, by a court that has been authorized, approved and sanctioned by the Supreme Court of this country. Having said that, Mr. Nasheed is not being tried for a vindictive case. He has been tried for having ordered the kidnapping of a sitting judge while he was in office.
Reminds me of Justice Iftikhar Chaudhry in Pakistan.
If in your country, if a Prime Minister from India orders a sitting judge to be kidnapped and taken into some kind of isolated area, what would his fate be?
Seshadri Chari,
try that?
I want Seshadri Chari to respond to that.
I want you to understand that there is a law in this country, there is a constitution, and we follow the law.
Yeah, I take your point. Seshadri Chari wants to respond to your question.
We follow the law, we follow the law.
I think the problem with countries like Maldives, I have got all respect and regard for the present president. We have nothing against him. But we should see the track record ever since he became the president. Maldives have been slowly slipping into a kind of radical elements have been taking over. The police is getting radicalized. The small army which you have is getting radicalized. Some of the most important valuable monuments have been destroyed. And there is some sort of a cultural police which is acting there. There are a lot of problems. And this has hurt not only the Indian interest, but it has hurt your own territorial interest also. It has also hurt your
but it is still their internal problem.
From tourism.
But it is still...
It's a serious matter.
No, it is. We can express
concern about it. We are not worried.
We can express concern, but it is their problem.
We are not worried as long as... We are not worried as long as it is their problem, but it does not remain only their problem, because any such activity in the Indian Ocean region
gentlemen, I have a couple of minutes.
Problem.
I have a couple of minutes. I'll allow Mr. Masood Imad to respond.
Arunabh, one last point from me.
I would appreciate if you allow me to respond to this. Since this government, Dr. Wahid's government, took office on the 7th of February 2012, there has not been a single politically motivated arrest in this country. All right. The information that you have that the police is radicalized and is going on the rampage, that's all wrong. Okay. Yes, there was an incident where some radical elements broke into the museum and caused some damages. We are concerned about these things. We didn't inherit a very proper, a proper government. We have our problems. We're trying to address these problems. We are seeking the help and the assistance of everybody around neighbor Sri Lanka, India, what have you, to solve the problems that we have.
Okay, Mr. Parthasarthi wants to make one last point to you. This is an interesting debate. I will continue this.
And the story, about radicalization. Look, there is no radicalization in this country. I can assure you this.
Okay, Mr. Parthasarthi, one last point.
Aruna, one last point from me. It is for the people of Maldives to decide whom they elect. But when we were asked to come in during the crisis, we were assured that there would be inclusive elections when the elections are held and nobody would be excluded. What is happening is a concerted attempt to see that Mr. Nasheed, who went by our word, is being excluded. All that we are saying is work it out between yourselves, have an inclusive elections, run your democracy. We are not interested. Unlike the Chinese, we are not a communist party.
Gentlemen, I'd like to say this discussion...
Gentlemen, let me respond to this. Yeah, let me respond to this. Mr. Nasheed is not being excluded from attending or registering for an election. If he is legally capable of, well, he is most welcome.
Well, he has some problems, let me put it, that's an understatement, Mr. Imad, unfortunately, only for want of time, I can keep this.
This is a case that originated when he was still in presidency.
We take this discussion forward tomorrow.
There's nothing to do with this presidency.
Mr. Imad, the best thing will be if tomorrow, we can have both His Excellency, your President, and Nasheed both on times now. We take this discussion forward.
Well, listen, I'm very sorry to tell you that we want to get engaged in. This is a matter for the judiciary, and I volunteered to do this just out of courtesy.
Thank you very much.
Respect to the Indian public.
Thank you very much.
That's about all.
Your voice does go across to a large number of Indians on this program. Mr. Imad, thank you very much. To all our representatives and panelists tonight, Sushant Sareen, KC Singh, Seshadri Chari, even G. Parthasarthi. Let's see what happens in Malé. Thank you very much indeed.